Welcome to the third and final day of CreaTech at cogX, the Hybrid Festival 2021, co-curated with the UK Creative Industries Council, a forum between government and industry which brings together all sectors of the creative industries, from film to fashion, advertising to architecture, games to music, performance to publishing. You can find out more about us at thecreativeindustries.co.uk. A big thank you to our CreaTech stage partners, Digital Catapult, Facebook, Moore Kingston Smith, UKRI, AHRC. The CIC promotes and protects opportunities for growth in the UK creative industries. CreaTech is one such opportunity, with high growth in investment and jobs in new emerging areas. We publish new research on Monday, the CreaTech Report 2021 with TechNation. Do check out the TechNation site, TechNation.io, to see the results. I'm Janet Hull, and I lead the CreaTech programme for the Creative Industries Council. And I'm also Director of Marketing Strategy at the IPA, and it's a pleasure to be your MC for today. We've got a fantastic programme ahead of us. And for the first session, we've got a particularly important one. Please share your thoughts and comments and get to know each other in the chat. Please ask questions of the speakers through the Q&A. And on your social, please use the hashtags CreaTech UK and cogX 2021. So the title of session 1 is The Value of STEAM, Creativity and Technology in the Post-Pandemic World. And if the word STEAM doesn't mean much to you right now, let me just say that in the CreaTech report, it was one of the things that came up, with the comment being made that it was necessary to put the A into STEM. I'm sure this session will tell you more about that, because it's a look forward to the extraordinary potential of cross-sector collaborative practice where creativity meets technology, through the lens of the big experiment of Festival UK 2022. And I'd like to give a big welcome to Sam Hunt, Programme Director for Festival UK 2022, to introduce his panel and for them to all tell us more. Over to you, Sam.
Hello, thank you very much, Janet. Hello, my name's Sam Hunt. I'm the Programme Director for Festival UK 2022, and thank you very much to the Creative Industries Council for having us here to talk about the value of STEAM, creative technology, in a post-pandemic world. And to do that, I will be joined by an incredible panel, representatives of different sectors and leaders in their respective fields to unpick that rather vast subject a bit. But we'd like to do that through the lens of the initiative that has brought us all together, which is Festival UK 2022. So great pleasure to welcome Anne-Marie Imafidon, Claire Doherty and Joshi. But first, we'll do a bit of background, just a bit of context as to why we're all in this digital room together. Festival UK 2022, for those who don't know, is a £120 million UK-wide festival of creativity and innovation taking place next year, clues in the name, and delivered in partnership by all 4 governments of the UK. The premise of Festival UK 2022 is simple. It's a festival of collaborative creativity. We believe creativity is our most valuable resource and not the preserve of any one sector. And when creative minds come together, literally anything is possible. If we are to face the shared global crises of the climate emergency, of social inequality, of post-pandemic recovery, and the yet to be played out impacts of the 4th industrial revolution, AI, big data, automation, we need new systems, we need new realities, new ideas, and collective creativity will drive that innovation. This collectivism is in itself a form of activism, and what better way to bring wildly exciting, divergent creatives from across STEAM sectors together, ask them to imagine, design and demand a better world, than to do it under the auspices of asking them to put on a massive party, because revolutions can be fun. We wanted to answer questions. What happens when leading thinkers from different sectors come together and are given well, time, maybe not that much time actually in this case, but money and support to think big. So we went out and asked the creatives of the UK that very question, with an open call to representatives from across science, technology, engineering, the arts, maths, and all places in between, to form creative teams which critically and platformed underrepresented new and emerging thinkers. And following a deeply intensive, remotely run program of funded R&D, we think that question was answered in ways no one could have ever predicted. The result is 10 commissions that will form the public programme of Festival UK 2022. These are 10 experiments in creativity, 10 examples of cross-sector creative ambition, and very happy that representatives from 3 of those commissions are joining me here. These projects will take place across the entire physical geography of the 4 nations of the UK, as well as online through broadcast in print. Basically, every conceivable way that exists, which enables ideas to be imparted, in some ways yet to be or currently being invented. We launched the programme later this year, but right now Anne-Marie, Claire and Dev are neck deep in realising the visions dreamed up late last year. So thanks in advance for making time to be here, because I know that sort of producing open, original and optimistic projects designed to reach millions can be particularly time consuming. So this is very nice that you're here. So to kick things off, Anne-Marie, could you give us a bit of an overview of your practice, and without giving too much away, can you tell us a bit about what you are working on with Festival 2022, with whom, and I suppose most importantly, why?
Sure. So thanks, Sam, for that intro. I think you covered quite a lot there in terms of Festival UK 2022 that I'm glad I don't have to start on that. So I run a social enterprise and nonprofit called Stemettes. As the name suggests, we are promoting and inspiring and supporting girls, young women, non-binary young people from the age of 5 up to 25 into STEM-related fields across academia, industry, and entrepreneurship. And we've been doing this for about 8 years. And, you know, we heard there as well kind of the inclusion of STEAM. I don't actually think you can do STEM well without the arts and without STEAM having that as a kind of overarching umbrella. But in terms of what we do, our normal practice then is to operate across the UK. We run intersectional cohort programs that are long-term interventions for young people, whether that's mentoring, whether that's clubs in schools, whether that's different forms of mentoring, kind of certification support as well that we offer to young people. So kind of building up of skills and getting industry and professional certifications for those. Our second stream is our impactful events, which are slightly more short term. These might be panels, these might be coding weekends, opportunities to get creative with the STEM. And then our third rung is our inspirational content platforms. So we have a closed social network. We have our social media platforms. There's a lot that we do across TV and across press and across papers and across podcasts as well, to share this message that STEM is for girls and STEM is for everyone. And so our practice is something that we've ended up kind of developing a couple of core tenets around. One of those is that our ethos, the way that we do things is it's always free for the young people to attend. It's always fun for them to attend, and there's always food for them, which is easier when you're doing things physically than it has been during the pandemic and in virtual. But we where there's a will, there's a way. So we've got food out, but also kind of the core of all of our interventions center on three things that have to be there, three essential Stemettes ingredients, which are creativity, which is why for us it is all about the STEAM, in addition to what we have as core STEM, and allowing young people to get creative with the new knowledge and with the elements of STEM that they're encountering during our interventions. The second one is altruism, which is about solving problems, not creating new ones, but helping others, which I think often it kind of goes missing sometimes when we talk about STEM, when we talk about STEAM, and even sometimes when we talk about creativity, that ability for altruism. And then the third part is a diversity and an inclusive practice that means that we have different types of folks who do different types of things across the breadth of STEM that these young people get to engage with. Most of them are women, but we do have non-binary volunteers, and we also have male volunteers too, who are along for the journey to show these young people more than they might have seen across TV, in the normal media, or even been told by their parents, their teachers, or their peers. So for us, our practice, we've got a very well-defined niche. We've been doing this for 8 years. We've had more than 50,000 young people through our programs and interventions. And so Festival UK 2022 was not necessarily something that was really on our radar. I think we kind of had someone reach out maybe initially when folks were trying to decide whether it was a STEM focus, whether that was something that was going to be explored. But actually, you know, the call that you described, Sam, we didn't receive it. We weren't kind of looking for grants or looking to be a part of a big experiment. But as soon as it was announced, I think that idea of STEM and that idea of inclusion, which was kind of very, very much deep rooted in the intentions of the festival from the beginning, meant that we were on a lot of people's wish lists, shall we say. So I think we almost did the mini process before you as the festival did the major process, because we're only allowed to join one bid. And so I ended up talking to lots of different creatives, lots of different consortiums, lots of different groups. And the ones that we pre-chose, if we could say it that way, was the 59 Productions Collective. So 59 Productions do a lot of projections, do a lot of really cool light shows and that kind of work. And then we've also got the Poetry Society involved too in our collective, who kind of do what we do, but for poetry across the country, and work with schools and work with different groups. And so for us, it was an exciting thing to be a part of, because who doesn't want to be part of an experiment across the UK, and, you know, go to even more far-flung corners that we've not been able to go to during the pandemic. But I think for us, it was also an opportunity to learn from others in their practice and the way they do things, to share some of our learnings. You know, we've been looking a lot at equitable practice as well. So being able to kind of share that and speak with 59 Productions and compare notes almost with the Poetry Society, and also kind of look forward to this post-pandemic world, right? And see, you know, what is it that we can do for young people, for the communities, for older people, for all kinds of people across the country, to help them explore their options in STEM, to help them explore what STEAM could mean to them, and to almost give them a kind of a subtler gateway into this whole notion of building back better, but also ensuring that we've got the right kind of folks around the table as we kind of go full throttle into what we're calling the fourth industrial revolution. So that's a little bit about us and why we've got involved.
Brilliant, thank you. Dev, so same question to you, coming from a very different background, so a bit of a interest of, if you give us a bit of an overview of your practice, I suppose, but then also a bit of an insight into the team and what you hope to achieve.
Sure, thanks, Sam. So I am a product designer and technologist. I've been wearing that label, I suppose, for 10 years now, and spent a large portion of my career working in contemporary art, leading the development of and execution of large-scale sculpture and contemporary arts that heavily rely on sort of engineering and technology to function. It's been a really interesting ride working out how to make art work so that art works. So that's my background. Like, I like helping people work out how to make things happen, like designing the magic trick kind of thing. And so the team that I'm a part of is called Collective Act, and is we're sort of focused around the Turner Prize winning Architects Assemble. They're like the main organization which the rest of us are attached to, but the rest of us are predominantly freelancers and independents, producers, sound designers, electrical engineers. Like, there's a whole bunch of people who are working on our project, and they've come from a really wide, you know, we've got musicians. Let's do the whole list. We've got musicians, sound design, structural engineering, producing, as in like arts production, technology and engineering, and then there's all of the supporting people who come with that. And what I think this project has already, even though we're, you know, through the R&D process back towards the start of the year, and now that we're in like a more delivery mode, it's been really exciting to see how closely knit the network really is. Like the number of people who sort of wandered into the studio, I'm like, oh, I know you from a thing from before. It's been really nice to sort of bump into people again. And I think that's actually been quite nice now, just this idea of being able to bump into people now that we're allowed back outside. That's been a really interesting trajectory on this experiment, as you put it, because it all started, we never met each other in real life. We'd never like seen one another. We have no idea how each or any of the other people really work together. Like, I think on our team, only 2 of the people had ever worked on a thing together prior to this thing, and that was a completely different type of thing. So it's not even like that experience directly translates to what we're doing. So we had to do a lot of like team building, for want of a better word, through tiny 2-inch boxes on screens, like you guys like. And it was, it was a real pleasure more recently to find out what, people wear trousers and stuff, and what kind of shoes they like, and all that kind of bottom half. But it's been, I'm surprised about how easy that transition has been, to be honest. Like, it's testament really to the level of like talent and professionalism, and moreover just like how great these people are. It's been a real pleasure to like get to work with them real time in the real world. So what is the project we're working on, to come back to the root of your question? We are developing an immersive experience. It's a physical thing that happens in a real space, and you attend it. It's very difficult to do this without telling you what it is.
Really enjoying this.
So the challenge of this is like, how do you build and prototype something in the real world when we're not allowed to go there and do it with people and stuff? And only very recently have we found a little studio space and built a prototype and done a bunch of stuff like this. But I think that's been the biggest change to the way I work, because for 10 years it was just like, oh, well, let's go to the studio and go to the workshop and hang thing off the ceiling and hit stuff with hammers until it does the thing, and then show it to our friends and people in the circle and whatever, and get feedback. And we've been doing this not blind, but everything is sort of secondhand information because it's coming through the webcam, right? Or through Zoom, or through a report, or through the world's longest email chain, which actually existed before, but now has a new, rhythm to it, because the asynchronous nature of work means that you have to sort of pay a different kind of attention to that kind of messaging that's coming in and out from people. And so that's who we are broadly, and very roughly what we're doing. And I think I won't get into much more detail yet, because the impacts of, I think this is the thing, like this stuff is so fresh for us, like how it potentially impacts the way we approach problem solving in other sectors, like, we're doing industry, factory automation, and or even like ticketing and hospitality, like all this, pandemic has had such a massive impact on all of these places. And the way that's going to sort of fall out in the wash, I think, is going to be really interesting to see, because it's only now, really right now, that we're getting to see it. Stuff like remote monitoring and access and stuff for factories is the same kind of, telemetry that we use for nanny cams or whatever, basically. But then you've got like this whole table service thing, and payment, and like distributed networks of the way resources are allocated. And you take different models, and if it works in a restaurant, does it work in this other place or in this other place? But now's the time when we find that out, and that's what I'm really excited about, to be honest, because what we learn about that will have to fold back into this project, because it's a physical thing that you have to go to, and that's the same for, it doesn't matter if you're making dumplings or making hatchbacks, like you still have to go to the place and do it with people, and we're all vulnerable and sort of have the same sort of baseline needs, and those have all the way you deliver on those needs has changed. So that's what I'm excited about moving forward, is how do we do that?
I think that's really interesting in terms of the evolution of all of these projects, because they're all being created within the context of the pandemic and remote working, and not beholden to a structure or a system that existed before. This is entirely new work being created to the context we are living in now, and hopefully in the future, which I think should be really interesting in terms of the outputs. Claire, same question to you, bit of an overview.
Yes, so thanks, Sam. Thank you both. So I'm the creative director of Collective Cymru, which is a partnership right the way across Wales, which is led by National Theatre Wales. And we brought together a team with the idea in our minds of what would a Welsh home nation project for Festival UK 2022 look like, and what opportunity would it give us to work across sectors. My background is I used to run an organisation called Situations. We specialised in place-based public realm, large-scale projects, often working across different sectors. And I think one of the most interesting things in bringing together our team for this has been not only working across sectors, but across generations, across lived experience, across totally different processes of making. And for us, we began by saying, how could 12 strangers in a room come together, bring all their amazing expertise and skills and experience to come up with an idea out of nothing? And for us, that began in Wales. That began in the question of Welsh identity at this time. We gave ourselves the question of why here, why now? What could we create together that would, one, allow this investment to go to the parts of Wales that have been most hit by the pandemic, but also really capture the imagination and take the story out of Wales globally in a way that hadn't been done before. And so we began with something called the Future Generations Act, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which is a remarkable piece of legislation. In a way, it's Wales's greatest gift to the world, apart from, of course, Tom Jones. And essentially what it is a legislation that protects the rights of future generations in policy and planning. Now, it's something that's known very well in Welsh government and local councils, but it's not known well in the popular imagination. So our task was, how could we create an emotional connection to the future? And without revealing too much about what we're doing, essentially what we arrived on is a form of storytelling that is transmedia. So exploding the idea of place-based, site-specific theatre across digital platforms, across places. And at the heart of our making project is something that National Theatre Wales has specialised in for a long time. It's a theatre, a national theatre. Those of you who don't know, National Theatre Wales is a theatre without walls. It works right the way across Wales and internationally, but has had at its heart from the very beginning collaboration and co-creation, embedded in communities in locations across Wales. So for us, the key question, a little bit of what Dev was saying, of finding a way of working together, has been, how do we design and devise a project across STEAM, so with creative technologists, Sugar Creative, who are an amazing Welsh-based, internationally renowned technology company who are working on the immersive app. But how do we embed co-creation with communities into that process of designing and making? We're going to be working with 5 communities across Wales. And without revealing too much about the international partnership, we're very excited to have a partnership with a international world builder who uses this process of world building, often used in gaming and in science fiction, fantasy, novel writing, to imagine a sort of plausible, holistic world in the future. And into that, there will be all sorts of experts as well as communities feeding in their lived experience, so that that future is really rooted in the here and now. I think for us, the kinds of challenges that have come up is learning each other's language. So what we mean by co-creation, for example, is one thing in the arts, and there's another thing in technology. User design, that's been super, super interesting. So the artists and the writers on the team and the young people on the team have a very different understanding of devising and artistic creativity than, say, a product designer would, that's sort of user based. So that's been really interesting, is finding a way to work together where we can use the strengths of those to create something that none of us have done before. And I think one of the other things I would say that has been really important to us from the beginning. Is we've had an amazing partner, Disability Arts Cymru, that are part of our partnership from the beginning, and we've committed ourselves to radical inclusion. But the work is really difficult because you have to unlearn so many of the kind of assumptions that one would make around making a public project, or the processes for connecting, or the way in which we might create together. And we've had a writer, Kate O'Reilly, that's been the representative of Disability Arts Cymru, who's been really helping us to understand the aesthetics of access. So what we mean when we say not just accessible formats, absolutely not. It's about who's represented in the project, whose voices are really changing the view of what the project can be. And that's been incredibly exciting, affecting all the ways in which we're working with broadcasters and who the creatives are that are going to be part of making this project. So I think for us, it's been that sort of challenge to us from the beginning. From Festival 22 was incredibly exciting around underrepresented voices, what that actually means for your process and your practices, and how, you know, coming out of this, we will all have changed the way in which we work. And it feels like the future of creating projects of this nature, that why shouldn't they go across boundaries and across sectors? Because ultimately, that's the way in which our participants and our audiences are living their lives. So I think it's a particularly exciting moment as we start to see what the project's going to be and who's going to be involved.
Great, thank you. And with the platforming underrepresented voices, what was really interesting from the teams is how each team defined that differently.
Yeah.
Some really interesting things in there. And just picking up something you were saying before about the sort of shared language of collective creativity, and the difficulty of, I suppose, of trying to do something genuinely collaborative, but then also working to create a cohesive creative vision, and where are the tensions in that? Sort of, Anne-Marie, have you found sort of difficulties in that, and working sort of in a cross-sector team trying to get something cohesive and clear?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it difficulties. I think it's almost one of those kind of trust the process, right? It's kind of inevitable. We're all colliding from different worlds. We're doing this during a pandemic completely virtually. We're doing it with all kinds of other things that we're trying to balance at the same time. And we're doing it having not come in. I know there are different teams that kind of came with kind of half-baked or kind of initial ideas. So we kind of came together with nothing, standing start really. So I think it's been the work, I guess, rather than a challenge. I'd say it's been, this is the point. If there wasn't going to be difficulty, then we've chosen the wrong collaborators, basically. Right. So I think it definitely has been a, you do the lights, you do the poetry, we do the STEM outreach. What do we have in common? And I think that's been the nice thing, has been, this is the common ground. These are the things that we know. These are things that we understand. These are things that are analogous across the different fields that we work in. And here is how we can work on one thing, almost like that elephant kind of analogy of kind of the trunk is there and the legs are there and the tail is there, but we're all working on that same one elephant. Gosh, this is where I've ended up.
Yeah.
But we're working on that one elephant, right? Each organ does something different, and so I think we're definitely into that rhythm of that's what you do, that's what you do. But I think there has been the idea of timelines, there has been the idea of working styles and internal cultures that we have also needed to meld. And we're still as we go, there'll be more of that, right? We'll still have that until we're kind of at the end of 2022, looking back and doing our legacy and wash-up. There'll still be elements of, oh, okay, that was what you meant by that, or now I got to see, to that thing. I've got to see your shoes, to Dev's point, but I've also got to see what you actually meant when you said X, or when you described Y. This is what it really looks like. This is what it really feels like. We had the word "or" as one of the kind of core tenets of what we've got in our proposal or in our project or our collaboration. And so now it's like, yeah, okay, this is the "or" that you promised us we were going to see by the end of this all.
Yeah, we're big into awe at the festival. We do like that word. We think that's a very useful human emotion in order to affect very positive change. Dev, it'd be good to have a little chat about the sort of shared language. That's what you do for a living, I suppose, sort of translate artists into something ethereal into reality. and how you found that work in the process, I suppose.
So yeah, the language is such an interesting thing in the context of design and in the context of like this particular process, because so like I said, like a big part of my job generally is knowing enough about how to talk to other people in different specialities to sort of know what they're talking about, but not necessarily be an expert. Like, and I think that's something that's really important about collaborative working styles, is like understanding that you're not an expert and that someone else is definitely an expert, but you do need to put the time and effort in to like know what they're talking about and how they talk about it. And this then is the game. Yeah, like you say, in my practice, but also I'm almost certain everyone on this project, but in their own teams, is finding this is like working out what is the language. It's almost, so you start with technical language in many ways, and then finding ways to translate technical language between specialists. So you have, so in a previous project, so I don't reveal too much, you have a chemist and a structural engineer, both very smart people, both very lovely people. They have no idea what the other one is talking about, because they use completely different language. So I have to sit in the middle and know just enough to be dangerous to find a way to knit those two conversations together. And now these two people work together, and that's really nice. It's really nice because now they're friends and also collaborators and are producing good work. It's also really nice because they don't have to do anything anymore because they're getting on with it. And so that's like the first layer of it. But then the second layer, and the one that's actually more fun or more interesting to me, is this idea of like project-specific shibboleths. So like you develop a language around a project inside a team where you have some phrases and kind of like idioms, if you like, that only make sense to that very small group of people, which is both like an incredibly useful tool if you lean into it. Like if you're happy to kind of like, you know, someone will say something in a meeting and it will sound really weird, but like everybody knows what that person means. You're like, oh yeah, that thing. And if you say it out of context to anyone else, they'll kind of wrinkle their eyebrow at you and be like, what are you talking about? And then you have to remember that you're not talking internally, and you have to kind of
that's really interesting.
You know, like
that's really interesting, isn't it? When you're trying to make something completely new. I think what's one of the things we've been sort of reminding ourselves as we go along is we're not making something any of us have ever made before. The form that we're making, you know, we're really, really pushing. All of us are pushing ourselves. So you sort of find this common ground, but you also kind of have to get comfortable with the fact that you're going to go down some rabbit holes and some cul-de-sacs and all of those metaphors, you know, and I think, like Anne-Marie was saying, have the confidence to say to each other, this is the work. This is the tricky bit. It gets a bit crunchy at this point. We need to pull back and rethink about that bit that's not quite working. And it's very interesting in that, isn't it? I definitely think we'll have some learning to share around how you hold that space really carefully, you know, and how you sort of take everybody with you in terms of whether you're leading it or whether you're a lead partner on one particular aspect. And we've found a sort of that people need to kind of dip in and dip out at particular moments. So it's almost like kind of a spotlight on one particular area needs a bit of work. And having the confidence to, it's a bit like a rehearsal room. You know, Lorne Campbell, the artistic director of National Theatre Wales, often has this analogy that we need to feel comfortable to suggest daft things and to fail a bit in that space with each other. So that sort of trust of the collaboration is super important, isn't it? And partly why I think the R&D, Sam, that you set up was so important. Those sort of 3 months almost felt like a kind of lab sort of process, so that actually you had quite a bond by the time you started the project together.
Yeah, I think with that, I think it's implied in these experiments in creativity that experiments are able to fail. Not the commissions can't fail. They're going to be absolutely amazing. But within that R&D phase, it was that sort of space to do that. And I suppose all of these projects, as there's the two balances of the process and the project themselves, and Claire in particular, the incredibly ambitious process of co-creation that will be kicked off to develop the project.
Yeah.
Where do you see the tensions in that, in terms of process versus the awe spectacle thing? You know? Yeah,
it's really interesting. I mean, I think there's a few things to say about that. I think one is that timeline is a challenge. So there's certain commissioning partners who want to know what the project is, let's say this summer, and the co-creation is in the autumn. So you've already got a kind of timeline issue in terms of allowing enough of the project to be designed, but allowing space for the co-creation to shape it. Because the worst thing is you can't do co-creation and then set up what it's going to be before you do it. So it's kind of, finding ways around that so that you're setting up a structure of the project, or allowing the content to be co-designed with participants. The other thing is really kind of just thinking about how kind of you support and care for participants post the co-creation. So one of the things that's sort of quite interesting, Sam, is that shift from a very collaborative collective process into a fairly high risk public project, which needs to deliver to a mass audience. So you've got to, in previous work, I've always used the analogy of first and second audiences. So your participants, your first audience, you're absolutely at the heart of the project. And in effect, from their experience, then spirals all the other audiences that then follow. But there is a definite shift in the project. And I think partly what we're finding, I don't know, Anne-Marie, if you're finding this as well, but I think you've got to have a way of being very, very transparent about that from the very beginning of everyone who's involved, to say there will be a moment and a gear shift in these projects where we have to then sort of ramp up the delivery mechanism to make sure that it's going to deliver as a kind of as a major ambitious global project. But we know, if we look back at the successes in the UK over the past 10 years, we can see where that's worked. So we know opening ceremony of the Olympics. We know a lot of the projects that were part of Ruth Mackenzie's London 2012 Festival, the boroughs of culture in London and Capital of Culture in Hull, and now Coventry. We're particularly good in the UK at really embedding co-creation and participation and the making of projects with participants. It doesn't make any difference to the ambition or the quality of the project. So I think it's just about being authentic and transparent about how the project is being developed, and knowing what you're trying to achieve from the beginning.
So we're quite clear, I suppose, getting clearer that this project the whole festival is intended to be a catalyst to a much wider conversation around the role of creativity and the creative, particularly in society, and the value of creative education. With that in mind, kind of tangential, Anne-Marie, are you optimistic about the future?
Oh, wow, that's quite a big one. No, I'm realistic about the future. I'm not overtly optimistic. I think I'm optimistic enough to know that it doesn't have to be Terminator 2 dystopia, Black Mirror kind of scenario, especially as we're kind of speaking on a cogX space here, right? So I have to mention AI. I don't know if we have so far, but I think for me, I mean, the reason why I get up every day, the reason why I do what I do, is because it's not inevitable that all the things that a pessimistic person would think and would consider could happen next, they don't have to happen next. And I think all of this is my attempt to influence what happens next and make sure that we have a better future than the one that maybe we would if it carried on in the course of how we're going now. So yeah, I'm optimistic in ways. I'm realistic, and I don't know if we're quite on the trajectory to utopia, but I'm realistic in that we could go slightly better than dystopia.
Dev, what do you think about the future?
I think I'm a pragmatist about most things, and so I'm sort of mirror partially Anne-Marie's comment, like the inclusion of creativity in this kind of improvisational yes and process that we're going through, and how that impacts wider industry and society it's positive, and it's good, and it's nice, and all of those things, and it's engaging in different ways for different people, but we're still up against the entirety of human history's worth of stuff that's already there. It's not going to change overnight. And this is what I mean by being a pragmatist about it, right? Like, we have the tools, and we have the will, and we have the impetus to make a change. And the question is, how big a lever is it that we're really on the end of to affect that change now, right? Like, where's the fulcrum, and how much influence do we really have through the festival, through these projects, or our own practice, like whatever, wherever you want to measure that. It could work, but you have to be sensible about evaluating what already exists and how, because change is incremental, right? I think that's the thing that, it's the same on these projects, it's the same in the festival, in wider sense, in the same industry for AI, all this, everything is a tiny change. Every day we do something slightly better. Every day we fail a little bit more and learn something new. It's never like, oh, and then it was all better and everyone lived happily ever after. It's never like that. So I think we can change it. It's just going to take a while, and it means you might not notice, but that's okay.
Claire, very focused on your project, I suppose, because there is that national context, which is slightly different to what Anne-Marie and Dev are working on, because they're both working sort of UK-wide. What is the change you want to affect through this?
Oh, God, that's an enormous question for 2 minutes, Sam. You know what? I think the thing that we're learning is the possibility of seeing things as if they might be different, and understanding the conditions that might be coming towards us and how we're going to move through them. One of the things the pandemic has shown us is our inability and also some ability to deal with crisis. So I think that in some ways, what I'm hoping this project will do is fire the imagination of how we can better connect together, what our potential futures might be, how we might cope with the conditions that are coming in 20, 30, 40 years time. And I think what we're beginning to hear from the young people that have been involved in our project so far is it's incredibly exciting when you put that power in their hands to imagine what might change, what their future might look like. Not a utopia, just as Anne-Marie says, but actually starting to really think about firing them up, about having the power to make a difference. So I guess, the best projects that I've ever seen happen instill a confidence and instill a model of how things might be different in the future. So I think that that's what I'm hoping our project will do, really fire up the imagination and make connections between people, unlock opportunity where there hasn't been any in the past.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a lovely coda on which to finish. I know we've got a few minutes left, but it feels like such a lovely ending to a wonderful panel. So thank you very much. Really good to see you all. I know we don't get enough time to actually talk, even though we're running these projects together, but really nice to see you all. And thank you so much for making the time this morning. And I'd like to hand back to Janet, if she's there.
Thanks so much, Sam. Thanks so much, Anne-Marie, Claire and Dev, for tempting us, I think, with your emerging plans for Festival UK 2022. Thank you for thinking so big. I love your mission and ambition. As Sam said, creativity is our most valuable resource and not the preserve of any one sector. We in the creative industries agree. We need more systems, new realities, new ideas, collective creativity to drive innovation. You pointed out the value of creative education and of firing up young people to want to make a difference. We could not agree more. We feel this is the way we can stay competitive, build back better, and promote ourselves to the world as Global Britain. Can I just shout out to all Festival UK 2022 partners that I'd love them to find out about Creative Industries Council CreaTech Ones to Watch. This is our project which is looking to celebrate 100 innovative projects, businesses, collaborations in 2021. We have a booth in the cogX Virtual Expo if you want to find out more. And there's just 2 weeks left for an application to be accepted. 25 June is the deadline. But beyond that, I can't wait for the official launch in October 21 of Festival UK 22 and the official opening in March next year. It sounds like the festival is going to make a big difference to the UK. Thanks so much. Our next session is at 11. It's a very important one because it's introducing a new piece of research, the second in our programme at cogX. We look forward to welcoming you back at 11 o'clock. Thank you.